The night before my 58th birthday, my father, who passed away 3 years ago, came to me in a dream and whispered, "Eleanor, don't wear the bracelet he gave you." I jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat, his voice echoing in my ears as if he were still standing beside my bed. I tried to shake it off, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. My husband had just given me a silver bracelet a few days earlier, insisting, almost pushing, that I wear it for my birthday gathering. That morning, when the house was quiet and the sun barely touched the porch, I decided to take a closer look at the bracelet, and when I lifted the inner hinge with a small sewing tool, a thin stream of white powder spilled out across my palm. I froze. My breath stopped, and my father's warning suddenly didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a rescue. Welcome to Eleanor's Stories. Here, I share emotional tales of family, mystery, healing, and the unexpected moments that change a life forever. If you enjoy stories like this, I'd truly appreciate it if you'd subscribe and leave a like. It helps more than you know. Now, let's begin. And trust me, this is a story you'll want to follow all the way to the end. Eleanor Ellie Harper woke with a sharp gasp, the kind that felt pulled straight out of her lungs. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The room around her was dark, the early morning kind of dark where nothing has shape yet. She reached instinctively for the bedside lamp and flicked it on. A soft yellow glow pushed back the shadows, and the familiar outlines of her small farmhouse finally settled into place. The oak dresser her father built in '87, the cross-stitched quilt her mother made the year before she passed, the window that faced Walnut Lane, and the cottonwoods she'd grown up climbing. Her heart still hammered too fast. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. But the dream clung to her like humidity in August, thick, heavy, refusing to lift. It had been her father. Not the way he looked at the end, thin and pale and more bone than man. No, her dream had shown him how he was when she was 12. Strong shoulders, sunburned neck, denim jacket smelling faintly like engine grease and peppermint gum. He stood on the porch of her childhood home, that old sagging thing with the porch swing that squeaked whenever the wind changed. The screen door behind him tapped softly in the breeze. He looked right at her. "Ellie girl," he said, voice low and serious. The kind of voice he only used when something was truly wrong. "Don't wear what he gives you. You hear me? Don't put it on." Then the porch light flickered, and he was gone, just slipped away into the Kansas dusk, like he'd never been there at all. Ellie pushed the heel of her palm against her eyes now, trying to rub away the image, but every detail remained bright and sharp, as if stamped into her mind. Her father had been dead for 11 years. She looked at the empty half of the bed. Ray had already left. His side was cool to the touch. He often went to the garage early, saying customers liked it when the morning guy was already elbow-deep in work. Lately, he'd been leaving earlier and earlier, before the sky even thought about lighting up. Ellie swung her legs out of bed. The hardwood floor was cold, and she winced as she stood. Her joints complained the way they had ever since she turned 51 last month, though she'd never admit that out loud. She pulled her robe around her shoulders and made her way down the hallway toward the kitchen. Every creak in the old flooring was familiar, predictable, even comforting. But the dream was not comforting. The dream left something sour in her stomach. She turned on the kitchen light, blinking against the brightness. The house felt too quiet, too still. Outside the window over the sink, the first pale morning light was beginning to sketch out the silhouette of the old barn across the field. She reached for the coffee maker like muscle memory. Scoop, pour, click. The steady drip of brewing coffee filled the silence. Only then did she see it. The small velvet box on the kitchen table. a deep forest green, almost black in the dim light. It sat where she'd dropped it last night without thinking. Ray had given it to her after supper, sliding it across the table with a sheepish grin and a, "Figured you deserve something pretty for once, honey." Inside was a bracelet silver, narrow, elegantly simple. The kind of thing she'd admired in store windows, but never bought because there was always a bill to pay or a fundraiser to donate to or someone else who needed something more. "It's got some, wellness benefits," Ray had said. "Saw an ad for it, said it helps with circulation and joint pain. Seems like something you'd get use out of." He'd chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know it ain't fancy, but I want you to wear it Sunday. Folks'll love it." Sunday was the church potluck. Her birthday celebration had snowballed into a town event before she even realized it. Willow Creek loved its potlucks the way other places loved football. People would expect her to wear the bracelet. She lifted the box now, hesitating only a second before opening it. The bracelet lay inside, gleaming softly, delicate as a whisper. Pretty, simple, innocent. But the dream flashed behind her eyes again, her father's voice echoing. "Don't wear what he gives you." Ellie swallowed hard. She reached out with one finger and brushed the inside of the bracelet. The metal felt cool, smooth. Nothing strange. Nothing wrong. And yet, she closed the box slowly, like she was afraid it might start hissing if she moved too quickly. The coffee maker beeped. She poured herself a cup and wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat steady her. Sunrise started to spill gold across the counter, catching the edges of the velvet box. Her father had always been a man of simple wisdom, the kind she didn't appreciate until she was older. He used to say things like, "A man shows himself in the quiet moments," and "A woman's gut feeling is God tapping her shoulder." Those sayings had felt quaint when she was a teenager. Not anymore, and something inside her, something quiet but insistent, was tapping now. Ray wasn't a bad man. She kept telling herself that. They'd married young, weathered storms together, raised a daughter who now lived 2 states away. He'd stayed by her side through her mother's cancer and her father's stroke. He'd worked long days at the garage so she could take time off when the district needed volunteers at the school. But the past year had changed him. He came home tired, distracted. He had phone calls he didn't explain. Nights where he sat in his recliner staring at nothing, rubbing his temples like the world was too heavy. And he pushed this bracelet on her with a kind of urgency she wasn't used to. She took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was Martha, her friend of nearly 30 years. The one person who could tell Ellie's mood from just the way she answered the phone. Ellie hesitated, then answered. "Morning, Ellie," Martha chirped. She always sounded as bright as fresh laundry no matter the hour. "Thought I'd see if you're up. I made blueberry muffins, and I need someone to eat at least half before I get myself in trouble." Ellie let out something like a laugh. "Morning, I'm up." "You sound funny," Martha said immediately. "Bad dream?" "Something like that." "You want to talk about it?" Ellie looked at the velvet box again, then at the sunrise, then back at the box. "Actually," she said slowly, "can I bring you something to look at? Something Ray gave me?" Martha paused, but not with confusion, with concern. "You get here," she said firmly. "I'll put the muffins out." When the call ended, Ellie stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of her decision settle on her shoulders. She picked up the box, slipped it into her purse, and whispered toward the quiet kitchen. "Daddy, if that was really you, I'm listening." Then she grabbed her keys, locked the door behind her, and headed for the Willow Creek Family Clinic as the sun finally broke over the cottonwoods. The bell over the clinic door jingled the same way it had since Ellie was a little girl, tagging along behind her mama. Willow Creek Family Clinic wasn't big enough for that sterile hospital smell. Instead, it carried a faint mix of eucalyptus, printer ink, and whatever candle the receptionist insisted on burning under the desk. Today, the scent made Ellie's stomach turn. Martha waved from behind the check-in window. She wore scrubs with little pumpkins on them, even though it was only early September. "Ellie, honey, come on back. Exam room 2. Ellie nodded, trying to smile, but she could feel how tight it looked. She clutched her purse strap a little too hard as she walked down the narrow hallway. The familiar, creaky tile underfoot, the humming fluorescent lights, the framed pictures of Willow Creek Little League teams, they all felt suddenly unreal, like props in a play she didn't remember auditioning for. Exam room 2 was empty, except for Martha setting out a pair of gloves and some cotton swabs. A tray clinked softly as she pushed it closer to the counter. She gestured for Ellie to close the door. "All right," Martha said, turning toward her with the seriousness she normally reserved for blood pressure warnings and flu shot season. "Let's see what Ray bought you." Ellie reached into her purse and pulled out the velvet box. Her hands trembled slightly as she set it on the counter. Martha noticed. Of course she did. 30 years of friendship sharpened a woman's instincts. "You're shaking," she said gently. "Want some water?" "No," Ellie whispered. "Just open it." Martha slipped on her gloves and popped open the lid. The bracelet looked even brighter under the clinic light, like it had swallowed the lamplight and was now offering it back in this cooler, cleaner version of itself. "Pretty little thing," Martha murmured, lifting it with careful fingers. "Ray's trying to earn some points, huh?" Ellie didn't answer. Martha's smile faded. "Okay," she said softly. "Tell me why we're really doing this." Ellie took a breath, then another, and told her everything: the dream on the porch, her father's voice, the warning so vivid it jolted her awake. She expected Martha to tease her gently, maybe say something about how grief plays strange tricks, but Martha didn't tease. She didn't even blink. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, reaching to squeeze Ellie's arm. "You know I don't sass about dreams, not the meaningful ones." Ellie nodded gratefully. Martha held the bracelet up to eye level and rotated it slowly. "Huh," she said. "See that?" Ellie stepped closer. The inside of the bracelet was smooth, but as Martha angled it, a faint dullness, a little patch near the hinge caught the light differently. "What is that?" Ellie asked. "Not sure," Martha said. "Could be polish residue, could be manufacturing gunk, could also be something else." Something else. The phrase sat heavy in the air. Martha moved to a small machine in the corner, the clinic's handheld spectrometer. A tool Ellie had only seen used on questionable salon lotions, and that one time old Mr. Keating brought in a rash from special imported beard oil. "Hold your horses," Martha said. "Just gonna check the basics." She swabbed the inner surface lightly and inserted the sample. The machine whirred, beeped, then flashed a color Ellie didn't recognize. Martha frowned. "Well, that's not expected." "What?" Ellie whispered. "This test only lights up when it detects certain kinds of organic compounds, skin-absorbing ones." Ellie's blood went cold. "Meaning?" "Meaning there's something on this bracelet that doesn't belong there." Martha snapped off her gloves and tossed them into the bin. "Let's take this to the back." Ellie followed her into the small lab room behind the exam area. The machines in here were older county-funded, but capable. She watched as Martha prepped a more thorough test, her movements quick and precise. "Martha," Ellie's voice wavered. "You think Ray would—" "Honey," Martha said without looking up. "I'm not going to assume anything. But I'm also not going to ignore anything. That's how women our age stay alive and sensible." Ellie sank onto a stool. Her mind skittered between disbelief and dread. She tried to picture Ray deliberately putting something dangerous on a bracelet. Ray, who used to bring her gas station roses out of nowhere. Ray, who cried when their daughter left for college. Ray, who once stood in their yard for hours during a thunderstorm, searching for her wedding ring after she dropped it pulling weeds. Ray, who hadn't quite been himself lately. Martha finished another test strip and held it up to the light. The strip shifted from pale yellow to a deeper amber. She lowered it slowly. "Okay," she said. "That's enough to tell me we're not messing around. I'm calling Dr. Wallace." Ellie's throat tightened. "From the county hospital?" "Yes, he's the only one close by who can run a toxicology analysis fast." She picked up the phone. "And Ellie, I want you to sit. Don't drive anywhere for a few hours." "Why?" Ellie whispered. "Because if what I think is on this bracelet is actually on it," Martha said, her voice firm, "I don't want you alone." Ellie felt tears burn her eyes. Not fear, at least not only fear. Shame, confusion, betrayal creeping in like fog on low ground. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know who else to come to." Martha hung up the phone and moved closer, holding both of Ellie's hands in hers. "Oh, sweetheart, you came to exactly the right person." For a moment, Ellie let herself lean into her friend's touch. She hadn't realized how badly she needed someone to anchor her, doctor. Wallace arrived 20 minutes later, driving an old government sedan with peeling paint. He walked into the lab still wearing his hospital ID on a lanyard, his hair messy like he'd been called during paperwork. "Mrs. Harper," he said gently, "I understand you brought something that needs a look." Martha handed him the bracelet and her preliminary notes. Dr. Wallace adjusted his glasses and examined the inner lining under a small magnifying scope. The silence stretched. Then he said, "This is unusual." He tested a tiny scrap of the inner residue, working with quiet efficiency. Ellie watched the way his brow furrowed deeper with each passing minute. After another test, Dr. Wallace exhaled long and slow. "I can't tell you everything today," he said, "but I can tell you this. The compound on this bracelet isn't something used in jewelry manufacturing. It's a transdermal agent designed to be absorbed through the skin." Ellie gripped the edge of the stool. "Is it dangerous?" "If someone wore this for several hours," he said carefully, "especially if they were warm or active, yes, it could be." Ellie's mouth went dry. "Could it kill someone?" Dr. Wallace hesitated, but only once. "Yes." The world tilted. Ellie felt the kind of stillness that follows shock, the kind where every sound becomes strangely sharp, every breath too loud. Her father's warning echoed in her chest. "Don't wear what he gives you, doctor." Wallace placed a gentle hand on Ellie's arm. "Mrs. Harper, this substance was not placed accidentally. Someone applied it intentionally. And whoever that person is, they meant harm." Ellie closed her eyes, fighting the instinct to crumble. But even through the fear, through the disbelief, something else rose in her, a small, steady flame of resolve. Her father had warned her, and she wasn't going to ignore him. Dr. Wallace cleared his throat. "This needs to go to law enforcement tonight." Martha nodded. "We already called Sheriff Collins." Ellie opened her eyes. "You told him?" "Of course," Martha said gently. "You're not doing this alone." Ellie's pulse thundered in her ears. Sheriff Collins had known her since she was 5. He'd coached her daughter's softball team. He'd eaten her casseroles at half the funerals in town. Going to him felt like crossing an invisible line, one she hadn't realized existed until now. But she also knew this. If she didn't take the truth seriously, no one else could. Martha squeezed her hand. "Honey, we'll go with you if you want." Ellie swallowed hard. "No, I need to do this myself. She stood slowly, shakily, but with intention. Her father had once told her, "Courage ain't the absence of fear, Ellie girl. It's just choosing to move with it instead of running from it." Well, she wasn't running. Not today. She slid the toxicology report under her arm, took one long breath, and walked out of the clinic into the cool Willow Creek dusk. Some things changed a woman forever. She had the feeling this was going to be one of them. The sky over Willow Creek had already dipped into that soft blue-purple shade that comes right before full darkness, the kind farmers call lamplight hour. It was the time of evening when porch lights flicked on, dogs stretched in driveways, and most folks settled into their last chores for the day. But Ellie Harper wasn't going home. She turned her car onto Maple Street, following the small wooden sign that read, "County Sheriff, Office 0.5 MI." Her fingers squeezed the steering wheel until the leather creaked. The toxicology report sat on the passenger seat, its folder corner digging into the upholstery. Ellie kept glancing at it as though it might dissolve if she didn't watch it. A bracelet. A simple silver bracelet. Something Ray had told her to wear Sunday night. Her father's dream voice rose again, firm, protective, unmistakable. "Don't wear what he gives you." She blinked away the sting in her eyes and focused on the sheriff's office coming into view. It sat between the fire station and the volunteer EMS garage, all three buildings lit by the same floodlight that buzzed faintly in the evening wind. The sheriff's office hadn't changed since the early 90s tan siding, metal roof, the American flag out front rippling gently against the pole. A couple of cruisers sat parked off to the side. Warm light glowed through the windows. Ellie parked beside the ramp, turned off the engine, and sat motionless for a long beat. She wasn't afraid of Henry Collins. He'd been a kind man since she was little, a widower with a gentle voice, famous around town for his pecan pie at Thanksgiving fundraisers. But she was afraid of saying certain truths aloud, because once spoken, they couldn't be taken back. She gathered the folder, stepped out, and walked toward the door. The gravel crunched under her shoes louder than usual. Inside, a small bell chimed. The front area looked the same as it always had. Coffee pot on a warming plate, bulletin board plastered with church events and lost dog flyers, a couple of mismatched chairs in the corner. Sheriff Henry Collins appeared behind the counter window almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting. "Evening, Ellie," he said. His voice was calm, warm, but his eyes sharpened with quiet concern. "Come on back. Martha told me you were coming." He pushed open the swinging half door, letting her through. She followed him down a hallway lined with old framed photos, Little League teams, county fairs, and a picture from 1989, where Ellie and Henry had both been barely recognizable teens at the same summer picnic. He ushered her into his office, a modest room with bookshelves, a cluttered desk, and a lamp shaped like a trout. He gestured to a chair. "Sit down, sweetheart. Tell me what's going on." Ellie sat, folder clutched in her hands. Henry closed the door and leaned his forearms on the desk, giving her the kind of full attention that could unravel a person if they weren't steady. "I'm not quite sure how to start," she said softly. "Try from the beginning," Henry said, "and don't worry about saying it right. Just say it." She took a shaky breath. "Ray gave me a bracelet last night, a silver one. He wanted me to wear it for Sunday's potluck." Henry nodded, waiting. "This morning, I had a dream. My father, he came to me. He warned me not to wear anything Ray gave me." She half expected Henry to show skepticism, but he only nodded again, slower this time. "Dreams can put things together before our minds do," he said quietly. "Go on." "I brought the bracelet to Martha. I just had a feeling, something in my gut." Henry's gaze narrowed just slightly, not suspicion, but attention sharpening. And Martha ran some tests, Ellie continued. She said there was a substance on the inside, something that absorbs through the skin. Henry's jaw tightened. She called Dr. Wallace from Cedar Grove, Ellie said, voice cracking. He came right over. Ellie placed the folder on the desk and slid it toward Henry. This is what he found. Henry opened the folder. His face changed in a way that made Ellie grip the sides of her chair. He flipped through the pages one, then another, then a third, reading silently while the old clock ticked on the wall. Finally, he set the papers down. This is serious, he said. Ellie's throat tightened. I know. He tapped the last page. This compound, if absorbed over a few hours, could easily mimic a natural heart incident. And considering your age, 51, she whispered. Barely. I know, Henry said gently, meaning no doctor in the county would question it if you collapsed during a busy church event. They'd call it stress, dehydration, age, anything but foul play. Ellie shut her eyes. She pictured herself wearing the bracelet at the potluck, laughing, serving pie, hugging people, and slowly getting weaker until her legs gave out. Then Ray collecting her life insurance afterward. Henry cleared his throat softly. Ellie, has Ray been acting different this past year? Anything off? Anything troubling? She swallowed. Yes, he's been tired, distant, phone calls he won't explain, leaving early, coming home late, and the bills. She stopped. What about the bills? Henry asked. I found 2 overdue notices tucked behind his coat last month, Ellie whispered. But he told me not to worry. Henry sat back, his arms crossing. And when he gave you this bracelet, did it feel like a gift, Ellie? Or something he needed you to wear? Ellie barely breathed. He told me twice, almost demanded it. Henry nodded grimly. That tracks. What do you mean? She whispered. Henry hesitated only long enough to choose his words carefully. 3 months ago, he said, Ray came up on our radar. Nothing big enough to arrest him, but enough for us to keep an eye on his finances. He took out a loan from the kind of people who don't list phone numbers. He hasn't been paying it back. Ellie stared at him. I didn't know. He never said. They never do, Henry said softly. Her hands trembled. She pressed them against her legs to keep them still. Henry leaned forward, voice gentle but solid. Ellie, I need to ask you something. And I want you to be honest with me, even if it hurts. She nodded slowly. Do you think Ray is capable of doing something that could harm you? The question hung in the air, thick and heavy. Ellie felt something crack, not loudly, not violently, but like a thin layer of ice fracturing under weight. I don't know, she whispered, and that was the worst part she didn't know. Henry nodded once, accepting the truth without judgment. All right, he said. Here's what we're going to do. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. We're opening an official case, and you're not going home alone tonight. Ellie blinked. I can't stay somewhere else. Ray will wonder. No, Henry said gently but firmly. He won't, because Ray won't be going home tonight either. Ellie froze. What do you mean? Henry reached for his hat and stood. I have enough here to bring him in for questioning, quietly, without alerting half the town. He'll spend the night in holding until we can sort this out. Ellie's heart twisted painfully. She should have expected this, but hearing it made everything real. Henry. He's my husband. Henry softened. I know, sweetheart, and that's exactly why I'm not letting you walk into that house alone. Tears welled in her eyes. What do I do now? You'll stay with your sister, Henry said, or with Martha, anywhere but that house tonight. Ellie nodded. wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Okay. Good. Henry guided her gently out of the office. Let's close this door behind us, Ellie girl. Your daddy raised you with good sense. You listened. That's what saved you. Outside, night had fully settled over Willow Creek. A cricket chirped somewhere near the flagpole. Ellie stood there, hugging the toxicology folder to her chest. The world looked the same as it always had, quiet, gentle, familiar. But her life had split clean down the middle, and nothing would ever be the same again. The air outside the sheriff's office had cooled sharply, carrying the scent of hayfields and the faint smoke of someone burning brush along County Road 12. Night in Willow Creek was always quiet, but tonight the quiet pressed in around Ellie heavy, watchful, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Sheriff Collins walked her to her car, hands in his jacket pockets, boots scuffing lightly across the gravel. You okay to drive? He asked gently. Ellie nodded, though she felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out her insides and left her a little shell of herself. Yeah, she whispered. I think so. If that changes, you call me, Henry said. I mean it. Don't try to push through if it gets too much. It was a strange thing, being spoken to like both a grown woman approaching middle age and the same girl he used to pull out of muddy ditches after spring storms. But something about it steadied her. Where should I go? Ellie asked. You have your sister's place, Henry said. Or Martha. Or the parsonage Pastor Joe said you're welcome anytime. Ellie hesitated. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. Henry leaned closer. Ellie girl, being a burden is not the worst thing a person can be. Hiding danger is. You let people help you. That's how small towns work. She nodded slowly. All right, Martha's then. He gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. Good. I'll call her on the radio when you're on your way. She got into her car and shut the door. The interior felt too small, too warm, too quiet. She didn't start the engine right away. Her eyes drifted to the houses lining Maple Street porches lit, curtains open, families settling in for the night watching TV or laughing over supper leftovers. A normal night for everyone, except her. Finally, she turned the key. The engine hummed to life. She shifted into reverse, but Henry tapped the hood gently, motioning for her to roll down her window. One more thing, he said. Ray won't know it was you not tonight. Not until we finish questioning. Ellie's breath caught. Is that safe? It's necessary, Henry said, and it keeps you from being dragged into anything while we gather evidence. We'll handle the talking. You handle the staying safe. She nodded. Okay. Drive careful. And Ellie? Yes? She whispered. You did the right thing. It was the first time all evening she felt something in her chest ease. The drive to Martha's took less than 5 minutes, 3 turns, 1 stop sign, and 2 porch lights that flickered on automatically as she passed. Willow Creek was small enough that you could run into the same 5 people at the post office, grocery store, and diner all in one day, and all of them would ask about your mother, even if she'd been gone 11 years. When Ellie pulled into Martha's driveway, the porch light snapped on. The front door opened, and there was Martha, arms crossed against the breeze, her silhouette filling the doorway like a sturdy anchor. I already put sheets on the guest bed, she called, and I heated up leftover stew. Get inside before you catch a chill. Ellie stepped into the warm glow of the house, and immediately the familiar smell hit her: lavender cleaner, vanilla candles, and whatever dish Martha had cooked last. Tonight, it was beef stew with rosemary, a smell that could soften even the hardest day. But Ellie was too numb to fully take in anything. Martha saw it immediately. Oh, honey. She shut the door behind them and wrapped Ellie in a tight hug. You look wrung out. Ellie felt her throat tighten. She didn't cry, not yet, but the closeness almost broke her. "Henry's taking Ray in tonight," she whispered. Martha pulled back, her eyes widening. "Already?" "He said it was safer that way." Ellie's voice trembled. He said Ray might not even know it's about the bracelet." Martha nodded, guiding her gently to the kitchen table. "Sit. Eat a little something, even if it's just a bite." Ellie sat, her hands cupped around the warm bowl Martha placed in front of her. The steam curled upward, fragrant, comforting, but her stomach felt tight. "I don't know what to think," Ellie said softly. "Part of me wants to believe this is all a huge misunderstanding. The other part—" She swallowed hard. "The other part keeps replaying that dream." Martha sighed, folding herself into the chair across from her. "Ellie, I've known you over 30 years. You aren't the type to throw your life upside down over nothing. If your father showed up in a dream like that, maybe it wasn't just a dream." Ellie nodded, tears stinging. "He looks so real, Mar. Like I could smell the peppermint on his jacket." Martha reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Sometimes the people we lose have a way of showing up when we need them most. You're not crazy for believing that." Ellie wiped her cheek. "I'm scared." "I know, but you're not alone in it." They sat like that for a few minutes, the quiet comfortable like a blanket around Ellie's frayed nerves. Then Martha took a breath, bracing herself before asking, "What do you think will happen when Ray realizes he's being questioned?" Ellie looked down at her bowl. "I honestly don't know. He's been so different lately, tense, distracted. I keep thinking back through the last year, trying to find the moment he stopped talking to me. When did he start hiding things?" "Men don't break all at once," Martha said. "They splinter, quietly. And unless they ask for help, folks around them don't see it till something big happens." Ellie's voice softened. "Do you think he meant to hurt me?" Martha didn't answer right away. She wanted to choose her words carefully. Finally, she said, "I think someone who loves you doesn't let fear or pride or money push them into decisions that put you at risk. And if he did, if he crossed that line, then God's truth is God's truth. We don't get to rewrite it." Ellie nodded slowly, letting the words settle. Later that night, after Ellie had changed into borrowed pajamas and brushed her teeth in the small guest bathroom, she found herself staring at the mirror. 51 years old, lines around her eyes, a face shaped by laughter, losses, Sunday mornings, and sorrow she never asked for. "Daddy," she whispered to her reflection, "I don't know how to do this." But even in her fear, she felt something steady inside her, like a hand on her shoulder. She turned off the bathroom light and padded softly to the guest room. Martha had set a lamp on low, and the little room glowed warm and soft. A cross hung above the bed. A handmade quilt covered the mattress. It smelled faintly of cedar, old books, and safety. Ellie slid under the covers. She hadn't realized how exhausted she was until her head hit the pillow. 30 minutes later, she was still awake. Every sound made her jump the wind, the creak of the house settling, the distant hum of a truck on Highway 18. Her mind wouldn't settle. Would Ray be angry? Would he deny everything? Would he tell some story that made her feel foolish? Or worse, would he admit it? She turned onto her side and closed her eyes. Then her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Her heart lurched. She grabbed it. Unknown number. Her hand trembled as she answered. "Hello?" A man's voice, low, controlled, filled her ear. "Mrs. Harper, this is Deputy Calder," Sheriff Collins asked me to keep you updated. Ellie sat up, pulse racing. Yes? Is everything okay? There was a pause. Then, we have Ray Harper in custody. Ellie pressed a hand over her mouth. He didn't resist, the deputy continued, but he did ask to make one phone call. Ellie's stomach nodded. To who? Another pause. To you. Ellie's breath caught painfully. And ma'am, the deputy added gently. He didn't sound confused. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded upset you weren't home. Ellie felt the blood drain from her face. Deputy Calder cleared his throat. Sheriff Collins will be calling you shortly. He wants you where you are. Don't go anywhere alone tonight. Ellie nodded, though the deputy couldn't see it. Okay, I won't. She ended the call with trembling fingers, then sank back into the pillows, heart pounding in her throat. Her father's warning echoed louder than ever, and now Ray knew she hadn't been home. Something deep and instinctual whispered in the dark. This isn't over yet. Ellie barely slept. Every time she drifted toward rest, her mind jolted back awake, hearing imagined footsteps, replaying the deputy's words, remembering Ray's voice as it had sounded earlier that week, warm and familiar, before everything cracked open. By the time the sun rose, a thin, pale streak slipping through Martha's lace curtains, Ellie felt like she'd aged a year overnight. She threw on jeans and one of Martha's oversized sweaters, then padded into the kitchen where the smell of frying bacon greeted her. Martha glanced over her shoulder. Morning, sweetheart. Looks like you slept as well as I expected. Ellie gave a half smile. That obvious? Your hair's doing that fuzzy halo thing it does when you're stressed. Ellie reached up self-consciously. Oh, good. Angel of anxiety. Exactly the look I wanted. Martha snorted. Sit down. Coffee's ready. Ellie took a seat at the small oak table, wrapping her hands around the warm mug Martha set in front of her. Steam curled upward, soft and comforting. What time did Henry call? Ellie asked quietly. About an hour ago, Martha said, sliding scrambled eggs onto 2 plates. He said he'd be by after 8. And Ray? Ellie asked, voice small. Martha paused mid-movement, then set the pan down, meeting Ellie's eyes. Still in holding, they're questioning him again today. Ellie exhaled shakily. Did he say anything? About me? Martha hesitated. Henry said Ray keeps asking why you're not home, why you ran off. Ellie's stomach twisted. Of course he is. They ate in silence for a minute. Ellie pushed food around her plate more than she ate it. Finally, Martha set down her fork. Ellie, you don't have to go through every thought alone. Say what's in your head. Ellie stared at the coffee surface, her reflection rippling. Part of me feels guilty, she whispered. Martha blinked hard. Oh no, sweet girl, no. But I do, Ellie said, voice cracking. We shared almost 3 decades, and now he's sitting in some concrete cell because of something I forced into motion. Martha leaned forward. Ellie Harper, listen to me. Protecting your own life is not wrongdoing. It's wisdom. Ellie wiped a tear with her thumb. I know, logically, emotionally, I don't know. I just don't know anything anymore. At 8:15, a knock sounded at the front door, firm but familiar. Martha rose. That'll be Henry. Ellie's heart pounded as the sheriff stepped in, hat in hand, the morning sun outlining his figure. He looked tired, like he'd gone home late and gotten less sleep than she had. Morning, ladies, he said softly. Ellie, may we talk? Martha squeezed Ellie's shoulder. I'll be in the next room. Ellie nodded and followed Henry to the kitchen table. He didn't sit until she did. There was a long moment where Henry just folded his hands, thinking. Then he said, "Ray told us a lot last night." Ellie's heart thudded so hard she felt it in her throat. What did he say?" Henry inhaled deeply. "He's in trouble, Ellie. Big trouble. The kind you don't talk your way out of with polite lies or charm." Ellie stared, frozen. Henry continued. "Last year, Ray got involved in a bad investment scheme. Promised returns, slick paperwork looked almost legitimate. He poured nearly all your savings into it." Ellie's breath left her lungs. "All our savings?" Henry nodded somberly. "When the money vanished, he panicked. Instead of coming clean, he took out a private loan to cover the gap." Ellie swallowed. "From who?" Henry's jaw tightened. "Folks out of Birmingham, the kind you don't miss payments to." Ellie felt cold seep into her fingers. "But we would have figured something out. I would have helped him. Why didn't he tell me?" Henry gave her a sad, knowing look. "Pride's a dangerous thing in a struggling man, Ellie. He didn't want you to see him failing." Her chest tightened painfully. Henry continued. "Those people wanted their money back, with interest, and Ray got desperate." Ellie whispered, "Desperate enough to kill me?" Henry didn't sugarcoat it. He wouldn't admit that directly, but he didn't deny the bracelet. Said he was led into an idea by someone who suggested a big insurance payout could settle everything. Ellie shut her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her father's warning echoed again. Henry's voice softened. "He said he loved you, that he couldn't see any way out, that he hated himself." Ellie shook her head. "That doesn't make it right." "No," Henry agreed. "It doesn't." "But why the bracelet?" she whispered. "Easy to hide," Henry said. "Hard to trace. Looks accidental. And Ray said you'd been getting more involved with community events lately. He said no one would question you collapsing after running around Sunday hosting the potluck." Ellie felt a wave of anger swell inside her, hot, bitter, and nauseating. "He planned it while smiling at me," she whispered, "while sitting on our couch, while talking about potato salad." Henry nodded grimly. "I'm sorry." Anger gave way to something heavier, heartbreak. Ellie put her face in her hands. Her voice trembled. "I'm such a fool, Henry." "No," Henry said firmly. "You're a woman who trusted her husband. That's not foolish, that's human." She wiped her eyes, reaching for a tissue. "What happens now?" Henry leaned back slightly. "We charge him. Attempted harm. Intent to defraud. Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud." Ellie's gut twisted. She'd known this was coming, but hearing the words made it real in a way she wasn't ready for. "And there's something else," Henry added. Ellie looked up. "We searched your house last night, with a warrant. Quiet, so no neighbors knew." Her blood ran cold. "What did you find?" Henry hesitated as if bracing her. "In the crawl space under the bedroom floor, we found another bracelet." Ellie's breath caught. "Another?" Henry nodded. "Almost identical, coated with an even higher concentration of the compound." Ellie felt her stomach lurch. "Why would he have two?" "He said the first one was a test batch," Henry said quietly. "The second was supposed to be the real one for Sunday. He planned to swap them." Ellie covered her mouth. A sob tore free, raw and painful. All these years, all the memories, all the shared holidays, the Sunday drives, the silly arguments over dish soap and thermostat settings. And he'd been preparing not one, but two ways to kill her. Henry reached across the table, placing a steady hand over hers. Ellie, you are alive because you listened to your instinct, and because someone you love, your father, nudged you from the other side. A tear slid down Ellie's cheek. I don't know how to put my life back together. Henry squeezed gently. You don't have to know today. Healing's slow. But you're not alone. This town won't let you be alone. Ellie nodded, voice broken. Thank you. Today, Henry said, rising slowly, you focus on one thing, taking care of yourself. He paused at the doorway. And Ellie? Yes? You're stronger than you think, and this, he gestured to the folder on her lap, will not be the end of your story. After he left, Ellie stepped out onto Martha's porch. The morning sun was warm on her face, birds hopping along the fence line, and for the first time since the nightmare began, Ellie felt something she hadn't felt in days. A sliver of quiet courage. She whispered into the breeze, barely audible. Daddy, I'm still here. The wind rustled the trees, soft and steady, almost like an answer. 2 months passed before Ellie fully understood what healing looked like. It didn't come all at once, the way people in movies like to pretend. It didn't sweep over her in some dramatic sunrise or arrive with a sudden burst of clarity. No, healing came slowly, in small motions, like the way grass grows back after winter, or how a wound closes from the edges inward. It came in the quiet mornings when Ellie stepped onto Martha's porch with a cup of coffee and breathed in the scent of wet leaves. It came in the evenings when she heard church bells in the distance and didn't cry. It came in the small routines that slowly rebuilt her sense of a life that still belonged to her. She stayed with Martha for 6 weeks longer than either of them expected. Willow Creek had always been the kind of town where neighbors brought food over whenever someone sneezed, and sure enough, folks arrived daily with casseroles, pies, flowers, and little handwritten notes that said things like, "You're not alone, Ellie," or "Praying for strength," or "Your daddy raised a good woman, don't you forget it." Some days she read them and wept. Some days she taped them to the fridge. By the 3rd week, she'd started feeling restless, like she was floating in borrowed space, unable to plant her feet anywhere that felt truly hers. Martha noticed. Of course, she noticed everything. One evening, after dinner, Martha set her fork down and said, "Ellie, honey, have you thought about where you want to be?" Ellie stared at the table. "Not really." "Well," Martha said, "I think you have. You just haven't said it out loud yet." Ellie hesitated. The house feels poisoned, Mar. Every room, every drawer, every floorboard. I walk through it in my head, and all I see is what could have happened. Martha nodded. Then maybe it's time to make a new place. Something untouched. Ellie let the thought settle. A house with no memories of Ray. A porch where her father's warning didn't echo in the walls. A kitchen that didn't hold danger inside its drawers. The idea felt terrifying, but also strangely peaceful. 3 weeks later, Ellie closed on a small cottage 10 miles outside town, white siding, a blue metal roof, a porch with 2 rocking chairs, and a yard that sloped down toward a stretch of pines. It wasn't fancy, but it felt right, like a warm hand offering her a place to rest. Henry had walked the property twice before she signed. Martha had collected paint samples and brought them in a shoebox. Pastor Joe had blessed the house before she carried in her first box. And on her first official night there, Ellie stood in the doorway, lights off, listening to the stillness. It was the good kind of still, the healing kind. She slept through the night for the first time in months. Her days began to take on a shape. slow, gentle routines that built themselves around what she could bear. She visited a therapist once a week. She started keeping a journal, something she'd always thought was a bit cliché, but found surprisingly grounding. She picked up extra hours volunteering at the Willow Creek Public Library, shelving returned books and recommending novels to people she'd known since childhood. Sometimes, people looked at her with pity. Most of them looked at her with admiration. Mrs. Whitcomb, the librarian, said one afternoon, "You're a strong one, Ellie Harper. Not many come through what you did standing this straight." Ellie didn't answer right away. But later that night, she wrote in her journal, "Maybe strength isn't standing straight. Maybe it's learning how to stand again at all." Ray's case moved quickly. He was convicted on multiple charges: attempted harm, insurance fraud, conspiracy. He was sentenced to 15 years in state prison. Ellie didn't attend the sentencing. She didn't need to hear the gavel or see the back of his head as they led him away. She did receive one letter from him mailed from the detention center a week after the verdict. It said, "Ellie, I am sorry. I let fear ruin me. I never meant to hurt you, but I did. You deserved better than what I became." She read it once, folded it, and placed it in the back of her dresser drawer, not to keep, not to remember, but because throwing it away felt like feeding pain that didn't deserve another meal. Her therapist later told her, "Not forgiving him doesn't mean you're bitter. It just means you're human." Ellie nodded. She didn't know what forgiveness looked like yet, but she had time. As fall settled in, Ellie began to enjoy the slower pace of her new life. She planted mums near the porch. She started feeding the chickadees that gathered each morning. She baked again apple crisps, pumpkin bread, cinnamon rolls that filled the house with warmth. And every so often, at dusk, she felt the presence of her father. Not in dreams this time, but in small signs. The porch light flickering the exact moment she whispered, "Thank you." A cardinal landing on her railing when she felt particularly lonely. One evening, a sudden warm breeze passing through the pines, though the weather said the night should have been still. She felt him, not haunting, just guiding, just present. It was a Saturday sunset when Ellie realized she'd crossed some invisible threshold toward healing. She was sitting on her porch, mug of chamomile tea warming her hands, watching the sky shift from peach to a soft lavender. She breathed in, and the breath didn't hurt. She breathed out, and the exhale didn't shake. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I made it, Daddy." The wind picked up gently, brushing over her shoulders like a comforting touch. Ellie smiled, soft, tired, hopeful. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine the future. Not as something she had to rebuild from rubble, but something she could shape on her own terms. A future where she might plant a bigger garden, where she might foster cats, or teach a reading group at the library, where she might even, God willing, feel something like companionship again someday. But for now, healing was enough. Living quietly was enough. Starting over at 51 was enough. She raised her mug slightly toward the sky, as if offering a toast to the memory of the man who had saved her. "Thank you for pulling me back," she whispered. "I'm finally standing." And as the last sliver of sunlight dipped below the trees, Ellie Harper felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. A sense of home, real, steady, and entirely her own.